Greetings to all the viewers. Welcome to this special session titled A Strategic Perspective on India's National Security, presented by Tilottama Foundation. Today, we are very glad to have Shri Jitendra Kumar, former Joint Secretary, Government of India, and a very experienced national security analyst. He has also been the head of training for national security centers, training centers under the Government of India. We are very glad to have him today. He is an alumnus of Presidency College, and he has been very much involved into research on international relations and security threats and these issues. He has also been involved as a diplomat for the Indian government. He has been one of the youngest officers to, in fact, head a national training institute. We are very pleased to have him today with us as we go through the various internal and external threats that India faces in these turbulent times. And so without further ado, let us go to Shri Kumar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shobhan, and thank you, Tilottama Foundation, for reaching out to me and giving me this opportunity to share my perspective on national security of India. National security is not about fighting war alone. War or military security is a very small component of a larger national security infrastructure. First time, I've always mentioned in my lectures, the concept and the idea of national security in recent times, in present shape, was spoken of by Americans just after the end of Second World War. They recognized that fighting war is very crucial, but you have to have a capacity to not only fight war, but sustain war. Ability to fight war or wage war depends upon your industrial and economic capacity, your quality of human resource, your technological prowess. Another interesting thing which has happened, that wars are no longer necessary for fulfilling primary objectives. In today's time, technology and trade can be very lethal tools of predation. It's a different thing that we have a very ambitious power right now who's on our borders, continued by conventional strategy of expanding its national frontiers. We will get down to that. I've always believed that in our checkered history, we somehow have displayed an exceptional lack of strategic perspective. Maybe because as a civilization and state, we have gone through very difficult times before we were resurrected and we gained independence. Whenever I have to quote about, or rather start a discussion on national security, two Asian experts I always talk about. One is Sun Tzu, a Chinese expert. I always believe it doesn't matter what is your identity. If you have something very intelligent to share and perspective to share, we must borrow it from them. Sun Tzu told centuries ago that if you know yourself and you know your enemy, you need not worry about consequences of even 100 battles. But if you know only yourself and not your enemy, then for every military victory, you will suffer a defeat. And if you neither know yourself nor your enemy, you will succumb in every battle. Very sensible thing, because Chinese have gone through an era of massive war through warring age, just when Zhou dynasty was on decline. So that's why on theories of war, they have been big experts, but I always quote our own Kautilya. Kautilya was very clear that if you are a formidable power, in fact, I believe that much before West spoke about national security, Kautilya had spoken about national security, and a very elaborate strategies he had talked about. Unfortunately, we have buried his theory, at least in practice, and not now, many, many centuries back. Kautilya's idea was what? You have to keep an eye on your friends. You have to keep an eye on your enemies. You have to know your external conflicts. What Sun Tzu said, know your enemy and yourself. And Kautilya says, not only you know yourself and your enemy, you know, or not enemy or adversary. He says that you know who you are. You know who your friends are. You keep an eye on what your neutral people are. So he has spoken about a much larger perspective. And that is why it becomes very important to understand our perspective. Sometimes to drive home this point, I always begin with a story. And this is a story from Panchtantra. This is a story about a group of monkeys who were living in courtyard of a king's palace. Maybe those who have heard my lecture on the web or somewhere else, you may have heard it, but I still feel it is worth repeating. The monkeys were living in courtyard of a big palace of a king. Everybody was favorably inclined towards them. Even king used to feed these monkeys by his own hands, and monkeys were having a wonderful time. But one among those monkeys noticed that in that palace, sheep used to come in the afternoon. They used to go for grazing and they used to come in the afternoon. And once they came back to palace in the afternoon, they straight away headed towards kitchen. And that was the time when cooks and fellows working in the king's kitchen, royal kitchen, they would be taking rest and all the utensils, everything would be over. So they would have one odd utensil or something. They will pick it up and throw at the sheep. This monkey noticed that, look, if this trend continues, there's a possibility that one day these sheep will come at a time when there would be no utensil left in the kitchen. And out of their exasperation, the fellows in the kitchen would take burning fuel wood out and they will throw it on the sheep. Then sheep have wool. What will happen? This will catch fire. It's highly inflammable material. So they will try to run away from there. And when they try to run away from there, right opposite that, straw for cattle was stored. So they will go head straight away to that place where straw was kept. They will try to extinguish fire by rubbing their back or something on that straw. And what will happen? The straw will catch fire. And next to this place was Stable of Kings. And what will happen if straw catches fire? The fire will spread and horses of king will get burned. And if horses of king gets burned, what happens next? Monkey knew that the best treatment for horse burn is fat from monkey's body. So howsoever king may love the monkeys, he will have to slaughter these monkeys and heal the horses, because his primary duty is to defend his kingdom, fight wars, and not love monkeys. So this monkey says, this place is not safe for us. Let us leave this place. And he faced a lot of resistance, but one day, some monkeys left, and one day, exactly what he had anticipated, it had happened. It happened. What I'm trying to say, in matters of national security, you cannot take chance. And this is one way of analyzing national security. Before I go further, I would like to understand, or rather explain, who we are. What do we understand by national security? National security has two components. How much is your national power? And how effectively you can mobilize this national power for two purposes. To continuously optimize your strength and to deal with all external and internal challenges and threats. I had defined national security, this is my own definition, that national security is ability to provide a secure and congenial ambience to your people and defend with their defined territory where they can thrive and evolve optimally, protecting their own values and identities for their all-round growth, happiness as human beings through a harmonious collaboration amongst themselves, to pursue their collective security and well-being, unhindered by any external threat or internal conflict or even assault from the forces of nature. Today, when we talk about national security, all these components, food security, water security, health security, access to technical and otherwise education, All these are components of national security. Security, territorial integrity, military security, of course, these are frontline and key areas. But political stability is the most critical component. So in this complex world, let us see who we are. What are our strengths? What is our context? I would say who we are. On this, we must acknowledge the fact that we are the oldest civilization, not probably, definitely the oldest civilization. There is a lot of research which will come up. This is not for chest thumping, I'm saying. When I say we are the oldest civilization, we have some of our strengths, but we also carry a lot of baggage. As the oldest civilization, we must have advanced far ahead of others, but we decayed and degenerated as well. So being the oldest civilization has an advantage as well as weaknesses in terms of values. In recent years, I've also discussed that the biggest component, one of the biggest component of national security is integrity, character, and quality of people in leadership roles. When I say leadership roles, I do not mean one political leader, because destiny of a country has never depended on brilliance or folly of one or two great leaders. It depends on some total of leaders that you have around. So I believe that one of the biggest component is the quality of leadership that we are able to throw up in different sectors at different levels, or whether we have this broad culture of leadership or not. The second realization, or rather the second component on who we are, I would say we are a large size country with good population. Sections of them are very intelligent, but we have a leadership crisis to a certain extent. It happens in societies like this because any society that has gone through external occupation, behavior pattern of its leaders changes. You have people who are opportunists who come up because they somehow endear themselves to external occupiers. Their whole behavior pattern becomes defensive, and they refuse, or rather they are reluctant to think boldly and own their country or think as strongly for their country as they should. Somehow I'm not trying to be critical towards anyone. This is a comprehensively proven research. So this is one of our serious disadvantages. Another thing I would say in terms of advantage, we certainly have one of the excellent geostrategic locations. We have a massive coastline, which gives us security. Of course, Himalayas have an advantage. As I said, despite difficulty, being the oldest civilization also has one strength. That is, despite this adversity, people by and large are patriotic. They are committed to India. Governance may be dysfunctional. We still have some institutions of excellence, like space research. ISRO is one thing. IITs have come up, and quite a few similar other DRDO, etc. Quite a few other institutions are there. Or even in private sector, we certainly have some high quality institutions. But we cannot wish away the fact that bad governance is a reality. Our bureaucracy is of 18th century. Our politics is of entitlement type. There is absolutely no justification that a democratic India should be 1/5 of the size of China in terms of economic capacity. There has to be serious governance deficiencies. Otherwise, this is simply impossible. Our corporate sector, they are not very competitive. This is a fact. And bad corporate debts are not entirely bad performance or matters of chances or just opportunities. These are also reflective of serious subversions of our banking and other norms which require to be addressed. Population. Yes, our population is very committed, but within that, in terms of physical capacity, we figure somewhere comparable to sub-Saharan Africa. We have good sections of population, no doubt about it, but our workforce is physically not strong. Anywhere in the world, we have noticed that whatever country has achieved extraordinary advancement, this is directly linked with the quality of population. When I'm talking about quality of population, I'm meaning physical capacity, technological skill, cognitive capacity. What is our position? nearly 30 to 40% children of India, they are suffering from malnutrition. They are stunted growth, impaired cognitive capacity. That is at one level. At another level, what are we noticing? A very high quality population, we are exporting them from the country. We have a lot of Indian CEOs. Unfortunate that we do have a brilliant pool of brilliant human resource that we are not able to harness it properly because of dysfunctional institutions, and these require to be addressed, these require to be spoken of, and we are not talking about it. It is also very saddening, and I would take a platform of Tilotma Foundation to share my perspective. At one level, my information is a decade old. We are having these difficulties. We have noticed how our migrant workers, they had to walk through hundreds and thousands of kilometers after losing their livelihood, after losing their shelter, after losing their economic security. But media reports suggest even now it is a reality that several bank defaulting corporate leaders or banking leaders or maybe members of political class, we keep hearing that how they have been wasting a huge amount of money in gambling resorts all over the world, and the total quantum of bad corporate debt, it cannot really be counted. This is dangerous. Sometimes in national security, what happens that even if you are financially very powerful, even if sections of elite are very rich, still you are vulnerable. When Mamluks invaded India hundreds of years ago, India was a very rich country. But if you have this kind of extreme inequality, it will be difficult. Even in global equality or inequality index, we are one of the most unequal societies anywhere in the world. An economy of this size never ever had such large number of billionaires. And there's a serious apprehension that these billionaires have collected, all of them have not collected their fortune through enterprise and industry alone. Economically, the kind of gap or the kind of asymmetry we have faced, I would not blame anybody else. I would blame lack of vision, strategic vision on our part. That is what is primarily responsible. Anyways, these are our difficulties, and I shall discuss how to go about these things. I do not have any perfect solution, but certainly a broader perspective. And the objective of this discussion is to initiate a larger debate, a larger discourse, not only among policymakers of India, but also among all stakeholders, all sections of Indian intelligentsia, wherever they are and whosoever they are. I would also say, let us see what is our context. Probably no other country is as vulnerable to external threat as India is vulnerable. As I said, modes of warfare have changed. An attack in virtual world is so strong, it is so potent that it can virtually paralyze our life anywhere. So these are newer forms of attacks. We know that the terror factory of the world is operating right next to our neighborhood. A significant part of our own territory, civilizational state of India, was carved out, and a very malicious clique, I would say a clique of global criminals, and I have a reason to believe, and you can ask me questions, I'm not saying it on the basis of any confidential information, I'm saying it on the basis of research in open domain, that this kind of clique is ruling a territory called Pakistan, which is not a normal state, and we have a bad habit. We are so inward looking that we try to look at outer world from our own perspective. I remember many years back when Gujral doctrine was being talked about, I was giving a lecture somewhere, not very confidential as such content it was, and somebody asked me about peace with Pakistan. So many years have passed by, and I said, in my lifetime, this will not be possible. A lot of people had ridiculed me, and I'm convinced that the way things are going in next 20, 30, 40 years, this is not going to be possible, but the objective is how to deal with it. It's not that, we have to deal with traditional ways. Another disadvantage I forgot to mention, or the difficulty India has, that we tend to disagree far too much amongst each other. There was a saying that 4 Indians walk in same direction only when they're carrying the 5th one on their shoulders. this is a terrible situation. This shows that how much deficiency of trust we have. Even now we witness that how some of the major political formations from rival parties, even in matters of national security, they have been squabbling with each other. This is something which has to be addressed. And second, I would say, we have to see the world as it is. We have to try and understand the world. When Kautilya says, you look at your friend, you look at your ally, you look at your adversary, you look at neutral. Where have we gone? That we refuse to recognize that this is not a normal state. As soon as this country was created, Baluchistanis revolted. Pakhtunkhwas said that they wanted to be either with India or they wanted to be independent. And that did not happen. About the West, how has West treated Pakistan or Islamic radicalism? They believe that Islamic radicalism is a very potent and effective strategic tool, strategic asset. We are fully aware of the great game of 19th century or the rivalry which Britain and Russia were having. In my blog, I've also written how, in order to contain Russians, Britain was a country which promoted Chinese expansionism. They were the ones who, despite Tibet securing independence, they said no, in inner Tibet area, they will have this kind of autonomy, etc., etc. And they brought in Chinese. And Tibet, in terms of culture, let me tell you, script of Tibet is Devanagari. It is closer to Devanagari script. Tibet was part of larger civilizational entity called India, even if it was not political. I would not like to get into that. Eastern Turkestan was also a civilization, larger part of civilizational entity of India, and so was up to Central Asia. After Iran, if any civilization began, it was Indian civilization, but we have been decaying, degenerating, and even now we are refusing to wake up. Now we are refusing to think like an Indians. We think, okay, we have to look inward. We want to be good boys, good people. We have nothing to do with outside world. Let me tell you, whatever is happening outside your frontiers is a matter of concern for you. And if it impacts your national security, devise ways and means to address it. I am not saying that you interfere in internal sovereignty of other countries, but there are multiple ways. Your diplomatic capacity, not only diplomacy, is not only about talking, that is way beyond that. Before I come to China, I would also like to say a little bit about neighboring countries, but let me complete Pakistan part of it. Pakistan, we know that they failed to hold together. Religion is not a common bond. The way they massacred Bengalis in Bangladesh, million plus Bengalis were slaughtered and butchered. We had huge refugee problem. In 1970, somebody who's a hero in Pakistan, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, he said, before that, 1960s itself, even before he had come to power, he said, let the country be partitioned. How could a stinking fish-eating Bengali sit next to me? So that kind of racial arrogance these people had, this is utterly disgraceful. Even now, there's massive propaganda against Indians and Hindus and non-Muslims. And they speak beautiful English. And somehow they manage to endear themselves to the sections of, I would say, rogue and subverted sections of Western elite. And this is what enabled them to steal nuclear secrets and nuclear technology from some of the Western countries. And I feel India was certainly sleeping. Our institutions were not doing their proper work. That's how this situation has come up. And now they are nuclear armed as well. A very irresponsible clique of people controlling a territory. And what do they need to do? As I said, they are controlling worldwide empire of crime. Whether a fake currency in Britain is caught, British pound is caught, the person involved in that is a Pakistan. When extortion business in Africa is there, person involved is a Pakistan. We all know how much in our Mumbai, this so-called D company and Pakistani linked this crime syndicate, they have been running parallel government. So the kind of security threat we are talking about, it is no longer confined to borders and outside your territory. If it's a massive global crime empire with drug, illicit money and fake currency, they will certainly, this is a very tempting industry. They will try to control your real estate. They would like to have investment inside your country. They would like to control your sections of your media. They would like to paralyze sections of your judiciary so that their crime empire goes on. And mind it, inside their crime empire, their intents are not secular always. Because inside that, they have to have, because of their whatever nature, a highly radicalized kind of hatred, not only towards Hindus, but Indian Muslims as well. We have seen in 26/11 attacks. They said, okay, kill Muslims also. They will go to heaven. I have seen outside this country that wherever Indians are being harassed, Indian Muslims are not being spared. Their hatred is not only against Hindus as such. Some people tend to mistake it because within Pakistan, we know how much hatred they are having towards Shias. They consider Ahmadiyas as the biggest, both Shias, Ahmadiyas, and others apostates. They say the biggest kafir of entire kainat, entire universes, biggest non-believers are apostates who deserve to be slaughtered. Same is the case with Memons. Same is the case with Bohras. So this is a very dangerous kind of radical ideology they are practicing, and people who are controlling it is a small clique, and the strategy they are using is a very unique kind of strategy, and we are not fighting this war smartly, because if they have to launch few terrorists, we have to invest a lot in security countermeasures. We are stretching ourselves. We are investing far too much of resources, and we are responding to them. And this will not be possible by simply speeches on social media or this kind of discussion. It requires very serious governance reforms, not only governance reforms, but very well thought out governance reforms. It is beyond capacity of academics to talk about it. Academics is very important, but you need to create something of much sturdier commonwealth of knowledge, as well as, I would say, with certainly academic vision. And this kind of problem cannot be solved by current Western democratic model. Our whole education system, again, I wanted to say, our whole Western education system is based on what? Memorizing information. Memorizing information does not serve. Every problem you come across in the world is unique. Of course, there is no perfect solution. You have to keep innovating, but only those who can innovate, they have handled the problem and they know how to resolve. Those who have achieved some success in handling similar problems. Still, you cannot say two problems are exactly the same. But there's very little debate, very little discussion, very little platforms on which we can speak or raise issues like this. Yesterday, I was on a panel discussion. I normally avoid panel discussion. I tell people, please invite me for interview. I do not wish to be on panel discussion this time, but there was a very esteemed senior colleague, former ambassador. She was in the panel, and as a token of respect, I did participate. And this discussion was about Nepal. Our discussion went off very well. We were on the same page, but the time came. I wanted to contradict even the former senior colleague. And I feel, this kind of liberty should come to everyone. I would be very happy today also if some young people ask questions with an open mind. She was mentioning about the difficulties in Nepal. I had said, look, most of these neighboring countries, even if they are normal democracies, anti-Indian sentiments, being anti-Indian had become fashionable. But these democracies are not throwing up high-quality statesmen. We have a point in question, KP Oli. I have also written on my blog, those who are interested, you can refer to my blog, and detail of Indo-Nepal border difficulty which he has raised would be there. Mr. Oli from nowhere has raised a border dispute with India, and his objective was what? His objective was to cover up his own governance failures. 1815 treaty he has cited, and citing that treaty, he has been saying that, look, Nepalese territory starts from somewhere at root of a different river. Kali River, you are all aware of, and he has changed the very route from which this river commences. There is some political turmoil going on. So what I'm trying to say is that in these countries, even if they are sovereign, autonomous, or rather sovereign and independent, they are on fringes of India. If there is political instability in these countries, it impacts us. I am certainly, under no circumstances, I would advocate that we should interfere in their internal affairs. But we must have goodwill across the line to push it, to tell them that, look, we are a very responsible country. We respect borders of smaller neighbors. We respect their territorial integrity, but they also have to respect our national security goals. They cannot allow their territory to be used by forces who are hostile to India. Mr. Oli had gone far too close to China, and to cover up his governance deficiency, he has been saying a lot of anti-Indian things. He has changed the map of Nepal. This esteemed senior colleague said, "Lol, Nepal has A faction, B faction, D faction. This is difficult. We have to do it this way." I was of the view that in these countries, we cannot afford to take partisan role. It is not good who comes to power, who goes to power. We have to devise a strategy. How can we command credibility that across the party line, we facilitate, not interfere, not impose, we facilitate statesman-like vision on part of these democracies. We cannot do it as long as our own democracy is not perfect. I shall get down to that. Two more things I would say. One is China. As a civilization, China has been constantly expanding. Not that we have to blame them, not that we have to curse them. We have to learn from their strengths. We have to appreciate their weaknesses. We have to devise a balance or some kind of strategic equation by which we can live with China. I'm very disturbed when I see many Western academics, many academics of Indian origin also. They said that, look, China was at the height of this power, and even at the height of this power, China did not try to become a colonial power like Britain, a colonial power like Europe. It respected or remained within itself. I doubt they have read good history, and good history from strategic perspective, history of Rome, history of West Asia, and history of China, and history of India. I don't think so. I have tried. I'm not saying I know perfect history. Tried to go through Cambridge history of all these regions, and I did not read history initially. I initially read strategic affairs, diplomacy, and defense in strategic matters, and then I started getting into this because history does what? It impacts your values. It shows, it is manifest in your outlook, not entirely. There are exceptions, but still it impacts. China always had what I would say a very secretive kind of working. China was never a democratic state at any point of time. Confucian morality of China is what? It certainly imposes some degree of restriction or something on moral restriction on the ruler, but imposes far bigger degree of restrictions on people. There's a very interesting story of Shun. I would like to, I'm reaching closer to the time. I would like to conclude in next 10, 15 minutes. But I must tell you the story of Shun, which is very often talked about. What was his story? It was emphasized how you have to stay obedient to your parents. It said that even when parents were not giving food to Shun, he still obeyed them. When parents asked him to prepare a hut and they destroyed it, still Shun respected them. When parents put Shun inside a well and covered it, still Shun managed to come out but respected his parents. And out of that, Yellow King made him his next heir. Anyway, the story is not important. What is important? That in Chinese Confucian philosophy, morality is that you always respect the rulers. Only two people in the history of China, they have been ordinary people. One was Liu Bang, founder of Han Dynasty, and second was Mao Zedong. What I'm trying to say, that this imperial history of China for 100 years, 200 years, they have advanced. And after a few years of advancement, they have destroyed themselves. So, but despite that, China has been advancing. And one of the biggest source of their strength was their legalistic school of philosophy, which we say. And in this legalistic school of philosophy, they created a massive or very, very lethal and effective instrument of state. That was bureaucracy. Great Wall of China was not created by emperor himself. It was ingenious idea of certain bureaucrats coming from middle classes or military officers. They visualized and they created. Another thing, aspect of China, which West says, okay, we should not fear them. China had a culture of building walls, and it was much, much before even the beginning of this Great Wall started sometime in Xin Huangti's time, 3rd century BC, before Han Dynasty. He was the one who had unified large part of China. And when this wall was being built that time, hundreds and thousands of people had died. Forced labor was used. And use of forced labor has been a norm in China. Secrecy has been way of working in China. It has not changed, despite communism. Present president of China is more like an emperor. Even now, secrecy is part of their work, and they trust no one, and they believe from Shang era onwards that they have the mandate of heaven. They have been communicating with heaven. They are at the center. Rest of the world is periphery. But with India, and they treated India with respect because India was a far more refined and sophisticated civilization. The best years of China was not Han and King era, or rather Qin era. Best years of China were under Tang and Song dynasty. China's advancement even in Han era came when Buddhism reached China. They became more pacifist. I must also say, I told earlier also, that wherever you have this kind of opaque regime, authoritarian regime, I hope I'm not too monotonous, whenever they face a legitimacy crisis, they tend to do what? Patriotism is a very convenient tool. They would be aggressive and belligerent towards their neighbors, and they have been belligerent towards whom? Not only India, but virtually everyone. So this expansionism has been part of Chinese design, Chinese strategy, you can say. And I believe that any country which is facing onslaught of this Chinese expansionism at one end, or opaque and authoritarian ways of working, who have no respect for anyone. We have seen how did they deal with their neighbors in ASEAN, or how they have expanded this 9-dash line, and how they have captured South China Sea. And when they lost the verdict in international tribunal, what did they do? They completely de-recognized it. When you have such an irresponsible power at one end, when trade and technology are lethal tools of predation, you have been ignoring. When you have this kind of rogue power called Pakistan using different strategies, you are not devising ways and means to find it. When you have so many governance deficiencies, your corporate sector is not competitive, your political sector is not cohesive, your bureaucracy is of 18th century model. What I'm trying to say, India has to break the shackles of some of the norms of Western democracy, has to devise. The reason for failure of communism was two things. You cannot curb human initiative, enterprise, and energy. You have to empower people. You have to enhance quality of your population. And at the same time, you have to ensure that industry, energy, and enterprise is recognized, or rather encouraged. And how do you harness your entire human resources, existing resources, into tangible national strength at one level? At second level, I would say we need to build capacities to fight these irregular wars. With Pakistan, we have to contain Pakistan, not only contain Pakistan, we have to devise ingenious ways and methods of fighting Islamic radicalism. And fighting Islamic radicalism is not going to be possible by creating a counter Hindu nationalism on social media. This is dangerous. This will create third law of Newton. Each and every action has equal and opposite reaction. This kind of social media response is going to create more harm. The best way is to bolster our national, or rather criminal justice system. I had written 7-8 months back why criminal justice system is important. If criminal justice system is weak and deficient, these forces will run their drug and crime and other empire on your own territory. We have seen how Zakir Naik had been operating freely. Of course, he has gone now, but there should not be need for any intervention from the top. Our normal way of functioning should be such that these things are prevented. They are nipped in the bud. I would believe that whole criminal justice system's orientation has to change. Focus should not be, a lot of lawyers should get a job. No. Minimum dispute should go to court, and this is an entirely different subject. I have written in detail in my forthcoming research work why and how this criminal justice system needs to be completely revamped to prevent conflict. to prevent people from going to crime and not joke our judicial system and say, okay, number of judges is very less, number of policemen is very less. Sorry, you don't have the liberty, because the kind of threat you are facing is very different from the West. About West, I must tell you two things. I'm sorry, Shobhan, I'll take a few more minutes before I conclude. West has a long tradition of piracy from Roman era onwards, when India had advanced to a level where we fought wars also according to certain principles. A lot of wealth in the West is not an outcome of enterprise and industry alone. Having said that, we have to respect institutions of excellence that they have created. Slavery was a norm when Abraham Lincoln abolished slavery in America. He was assassinated. People had revolted, saying that, look, how come you are taking away my liberty to own slaves? That democracy is not perfect. Despite all their strength, there are complaints that how American democracy has been subverted. You keep on listening to lectures day in and day out. So their systems are not perfect. We need not copy that system in entirety. We have to define our own system of democracy, drawing a little bit from our own strength, but also drawing from strengths of those institutions. Some institutions of excellence they have created. What I'm trying to say, wherever required in the emerging order, we have to deal with West. We have to derive their strength, derive from their strengths like institutions of excellence or technological advancement. We also cannot afford complete adversarial relationship with China. We have to find ways and means on which we can work together. We have to build pressure. We have to tell them, sorry, you cannot keep on expanding. China, I have written in my blog also and so many lectures that this was a civilization between Yellow River and Yangtze River. From there, they started expanding Manchuria to different parts of Mongoloid area, to other people whom they called barbarians or nomads. Entire these areas, they have virtually annihilated. Tibet and Eastern Turkestan and Tatars, the same Tatars who had ravaged Beijing in earlier era, because of whom they had to build this wall. They have now been converted into some kind of animals living in some museum. So they have been somehow expanding slowly and steadily. And it is not that they're not an expansionist power. And right now also we notice how they have expanded their domain of influence in whole of South Asia, gone to Africa. There are examples of resentment. Under these circumstances, if India is able to transform its governance capacity, it is because of its own original and ancient values. I believe India poses threat to no one, not neither to the West, nor to the Africa. I have always maintained in my writers last year also that because of bad governance of India, this asymmetry, it has caused massive global imbalance. We have to deal with West. We have to deal with Russia, who have stood by us even during our difficult time in 50s and 60s. We have to have confidence that, look, tell the West also that we cannot deal because this is a necessity. As we say, if India comes and indocracy comes, the whole world has something to look forward to. But I believe that any forward movement in this direction is not possible without 2 to 3 changes. Certainly, we need a leadership-driven, a professional, merit-driven in our civil service, in our criminal justice system. But at the same time, without 2 reforms, reforms in political parties and reforms in corporate sector, nothing is going to be possible, because political parties cannot afford to work as dynastic syndicates, because they have stolen democracy, because a small clique of people, they have managed to form political parties, remain leader for a long time. They block key or powerful ideas and powerful talent from coming into public space. They have become obstructors to optimum development of India, optimum empowerment of India. Stakeholders of India need to take stock. Similarly, corporate sector. You're not simply here to enhance your empire at the cost of people of India. You have to play your role, and your role is what? Harness energy of people, not give jobs as charity. Come up as leaders who can translate our latent potentials into tangible strengths. That is the role, and that is the responsibility you have to take up. We need not follow. Even America now, big companies are like corporations. Even in Britain, if somebody working in a corporate organization, also government organization, also abuses any of the facilities, obstructs anything, there's a problem. Our bureaucracy, as I said, brilliant people are there in that bureaucracy. But there's zero incentive for high quality input. Somebody who joins at a lower level, however hard he may work, he has no chance to rise to the top. Once you're joining at the top, there is no pressure for you to excel. There has to be competition, and the present mode and method of evaluation and reward has to be changed and done away with. This morality ethics is brilliant. I would have said quite a few things, but I would say that we are at the crossroads. And from this crossroads, how we are going to move forward will depend on the quality of initiatives that we take from here. I shall be open to question Dr. Shobhan. And sorry, I have exceeded a little bit of time. You can ask me any question, whatever I'm not able to answer now, I shall answer you later on. Thank you very much once again. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ojha, for your very enlightening address and the vast area of issues that you covered, as well as the internal security aspects, the external security aspects, as well as very interesting insights on international relations and our foreign policy and our relations with our neighbors, particularly China, Nepal, and Pakistan. So I think if there are any questions, we can take them at this point.
If people are taking time to, are you getting
Hello,
questions?
Sir.
Yes,
Hello,
yes.
Sir. Hello, sir.
Yes.
It's Polen Bhattacharya from Tilottama
Please.
Foundation, Business Manager. Well, I would like to speak. I would like to ask you upon what your thoughts of that India is buying the ammunitions and air and all the kind of things for the war, and all preparing for the war, preparing for any engagement from China, and what your thoughts are? Is it going on the right path? Is India is going on the right path on this side?
I have always maintained that, look, in matters of crisis, we should stand together as a country, because the kind of information which government has, people cannot have. China is very powerful militarily. They have access to far more advanced weaponry. So naturally, government is trying its level best to go for this emergency procurement. I fully endorse whatever is happening right now, because we don't have an option. Look, when war comes, it is not in your hand. I'm not saying war is going to happen, but if at all it is imposed, we should remain prepared. Of course, what I have argued, we should have remained prepared for the last 30, 40, 50 years, which we have not done it entirely. But even now, we are not in a bad situation. We are trying to marshal our existing resources. Our resources do not mean material resources. The goodwill we have with other countries who are supplying these weapons, we are marshaling all these resources, and we are trying to prepare ourselves to face any eventuality. I believe it is very much in the right direction right now at a tactical level. But I would all the time arguing, tactical level is fine. We have to move to strategic level, and that's why this discussion is all about. Have I been able to make a point? Yes,
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, there is another question I want to ask. Is that what's your thoughts about our Prime Minister, our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi visit on Ladakh, and on yesterday or day after that day? Yes.
I have spoken in media also, and I believe that in a situation like this, such a move certainly bolsters confidence of troops, because it's very important that morale of people and morale of troops particularly, and morale of whole country, entire country should be very high. So I consider it a gold gambit. But what I would like to say that, a lot of things could have happened. This is very important at a tactical level, at gesture, etc. is fine. But I would have loved to see a more serious strategic restructuring of governance, which unfortunately has not happened. Maybe politicians do not have an idea. Politicians, after all, their core competence is on winning elections and doing these things, engaging. But somehow our civil service or bureaucracy or national security related issues are concerned on these institutions matter. So this move in itself is wonderful. But at the same time, I would have liked that, whatever has happened has happened. We cannot change it. But we build a much stronger strategic capacity that we do not worry at the last moment. And we build a stronger war prevention capacity. Because all said and done, China should never have had the courage and audacity to come to our frontiers. Fact is that all national security is about how you empower yourself, that your adversaries or potential, real or actual, they are deterred from taking action. They think many times and they fear about consequences. So not only on Chinese front, but on Pakistani front and small murmurs which we are witnessing and neighboring these things disturb me a little bit. But that move in itself, of course, I have endorsed it and I appreciate that. And we admire it. We all felt very nice as Indians. Our morale was lifted after that visit and after what he spoke and the way he spoke.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. On that note only, I would like to ask, can you illustrate?
Anybody else not asking questions?
Yeah.
Sir, just another question I want to ask.
Ms. Bolmi, you can come to we can take a question just after this.
Okay.
Pritam Shardar has asked a question. Sir, can you elucidate a bit more on why hating India is becoming a fashion amongst India's neighboring countries?
There are two reasons. One is very innocent reason. Innocent reason is, whenever you are a small country, you have anxiety, you fear, you feel threatened. So that is one reason, because even if in Dhaka there was a time when fish is not available, they thought, oh, all the fish has gone to Calcutta. Calcuttans have procured all the Irish fish. So that anxiety is there. And you always fear that, okay, big power is doing this. Any discomfort is there, you start cursing the big power. So that is one thing. Second is countries like both Nepal and Sri Lanka, there's a very unique dynamic. Here, particularly in Sri Lanka, I will give you an example. The Tamils who are not of recent origin, they had migrated, 3rd century BC, simply they speak Tamil language. They were a small community, but financially they were bigger elite. They had access to Western education. They occupied all key positions in government. They controlled key sectors of economy. And Sinhalese, despite being overwhelming majority, they did not have these things. So at one point of time, it became very fashionable to hate Tamils. And first, one of the initial presidents, not first, SWRD Bandaranaike, father of Chandrika Kumar Tunge, he brought in Sinhala only policy because it was very profitable for him to hate Tamils. And once he started hating Tamils, Tamils started looking up to India. India has a massive Tamil-speaking population, and naturally, he was able to generate anti-India sentiment. And later on, even LTT became anti-India. Right now, the case in Nepal, Madhesis are demanding something, and Madhesis have some ties with India. And in order to provoke, or rather prop up your national sentiment, what do? You start hating Madhesis, and through Madhesis, you start hating India. But amidst all these things, as I said, security dynamics have changed. So there are external forces. There are Pakistanis who want to fish in troubled waters. They have created pockets of support. So a lot of this hatred is not automatic, instant. A lot of this hatred is engineered. In Nepal also, Chinese have managed to create foothold and pockets of support. They are also trying to exploit. So these things, these are bound to happen. China has done what? All smaller powers, smaller neighbors on its fringes, it had eaten them up. Bigger ones also, it has eaten them up. We have respected their sovereignty. But these states are not able to, protect their own territory from these kind of sentiments. Politicians are going haywire. They are behaving in irresponsible manner because they are desperate to capture power. We know the consequences of what happened in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka was a country which was far more advanced than modern-day Singapore. They have brought down that country to the level of a developing country. Sri Lanka had literacy close to 100% in 1960s and 70s. He destroyed because of this bad politicking. And right now, Pakistanis and Chinese, Chinese have taken over Hambantota port. So these things are there. And I would say, instead of blaming them, as my esteemed senior colleague was doing yesterday, we have to build a capacity that we engage them. But this capacity is not possible only by building at diplomatic level. You have to have a stronger governance capacity at home to have such understanding that, look, you are small neighbors on our fringes. We respect your sovereignty, but you have to be our security, your security and our security is close. So, because whenever there's a problem on a big empire, the problem starts on the fringes. And this is very disturbing sign that we are seeing that on fringes of these countries, these problems are starting. And I don't blame those countries. I feel we need to be strong enough to handle these countries, not by interfering, but by building a different kind of equation, by ensuring that our democracy is stable and healthy, and by ensuring that their democracy is also stable and healthy. And there's a much stronger interlinkage and interdependence where we protect each other. This is possible. I'm not talking about theory. Please. Thank you. I hope I answered you.
Thank you so much. We have one question from Facebook, one of our Facebook audience, Shudipta Shaha.
Yes,
sir,
she is my reader.
Yeah. China is at present a high level of marketing and also have engaged in the medical field. China already used their ancient times therapy for treating or controlling the COVID crisis. But in our country, India, that is the land of Ayurveda, we don't take any good action in the development of this formulation. Why, sir? If we shift our interest in the trade or medical field to Japan, then I think it will be good. Is it possible, sir, at the recent times? What are the consequences? This is our question.
Look, what China has done, they have invested in their governance capacity. You may have aspirations like this, but what is it which is going to translate your aspirations into reality? Two things. Not only government machinery and regulation at all, only. Your government machinery and regulation should be such that it promotes industry, enterprise, it encourages entrepreneurs that, look, you are coming up. Not that, okay, you come here and you do this, or you pay bribe. No. They should be more in the role of guiding, advising, encouraging, telling. Of course, those who are not doing very well, they need to be stopped. So the failure is not one of Ayurveda only. I feel it is reflective of a larger systemic failure, that we have not focused on our regulatory capacity. People are saying, okay, some bureaucrat has written a friend that, okay, regulatory needs to be done. No. Regulation is very critical, not now, but right from the beginning. We have very horrible regulatory capacity of Indian state. Indian state still works as, as if we are, they are representing a colonial lord or political lord. Colonial lord has gone away and they are not accountable or obliged towards this country and its people. I'm not saying that they are flawed. The whole structure and process is flawed of our civil service and bureaucracy. And they have been more as impediments to development, obstructors to development, and cronyism has been on rise. But despite that, I'm very glad I saw that biotech has come out with some innovation. What I say, Sudipta, that our natural development, evolutionary process of Ayurveda was disrupted. There is no doubt about it. We can't go back. Ayurveda has to develop, not where it was. It has to come to the certain stage, and there has to be state encouragement, and there has to be initiative from corporate sector also. Right now, I do not know what the position is, but I also have belief in Ayurveda. It cannot be solution to everything, but it can certainly contribute to our healthcare system, and this government has recognized, and that's why we have Ayush system. Maybe we need to build further with combined effort of state as well as combined effort of people in private sector, our entrepreneurs and corporate sector people.
Thank you.
I hope I've answered.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You were talking about, the Pakistani proxy war, if I may ask about you, about that. In the Pakistan proxy war system, it is often said that, there is a resource gap. I mean, Pakistan has to spend a lot of less resources to send in, non-formal armed combatants who are not officially part of any formal armed combatant, whereas Indian government using formal forces has to spend a lot more. So do you find any, can you suggest any tactical or strategic, solutions to this problem? The problem of financing when it comes to fighting insurgency. And also, if you think about, I would like to ask about one more issue, that is about the Armed Forces Special Powers Act that has been there. And, and when it comes to India's soft power, that is one, area of contention, that whether that law has been effectively used. Although that law was in fact promulgated or, brought into force many years ago in the 50s. So the situation has also changed, and I think it was initially not for Kashmir and it was later extended to Kashmir. So what is the applicability of the law today? Is the law properly executed today? And do you think that sort of reforms are necessary? And also if you could comment on the funding part.
Look, I'll first answer the Armed Forces Act and then I will answer the others. Look, the kind of situation we are in today, our armed forces personnel need protection of this act. This is certainly not a desirable act. This must not have happened. But the manner in which we are fighting, I believe that it cannot be done away with straight. We have to consult our people who are on the ground because they are the ones who are on the forefront. So right now, I would say whether we like it or not, in the prevailing conditions, this act is probably indispensable. Regarding fighting, yes, it is something which has disturbed me a lot. We are I felt extremely worried. Because Pakistan, what does it expect? It does not expect to win. A country which has not been able to govern itself, not been able to govern its own people and its own territory. What is its objective? Its objective in 1950s and 1960s or 70s was what? To hold on to its own territory, to build something, an artificial creation called Pakistan in name of religion. But that time is over. As I said, our biggest problem is we are inward looking. Even external security is handled by policemen who are more comfortable with the Indian Penal Code, etc. Their impressionable years, their formative years, they have been police officers. And when you have to get down to external security, it is an entirely different world. So this inward baggage, our refusal, not reluctance, I would say, our refusal to look at outside world is something which is responsible for this, which is bringing our security forces under a lot of pressure. I would say India cannot afford to act like Pakistan. We have to have people of Pakistan on our side. In order to fight this war, what is the ulterior agenda and motive of people who are fighting this war? Not nationalism. Nationalism is one part. It's a highly milking, rather, kind of profession. Those who are at the top end, they are carrying out propaganda so that by that propaganda, young people get impacted and they join the ranks of these terrorists, etc. They come to India, they kill themselves. And by this spectacular thing, they can keep the pot boiling. They can keep the shop of radicalism going on. And what does it give them? It gives them enormous power. See what has happened in Afghanistan. Even Americans had to literally come to Pakistan, seek Pakistan's help, and do what? To find an exit from Afghanistan. How much power, what sense of power it would have given to Pakistanis? That by rather sowing terrorism and radicalism, they have made themselves globally relevant. That because they're source of strength. And they need constant supply of manpower. And constant supply of manpower to do what? I'm not saying this thing. UNODC, UN Office on Drug and Crime, that has spoken that no insurgency in the world has been funded by taxpayers' money. Most insurgencies are funded by illicit crime, it is drug money, etc. And law enforcement agencies nowhere in the world have reached a level of sophistication where they can detect this. I will give you one example. This is not secret, not confidential. I was posted purely as a diplomat and not as an intelligence officer or as something, as some media reports attribute. My job was consular affairs, and any Indian in distress used to approach me. I used to get telephone calls from a city called Sheffield. Indian students used to say that, look, Pakistanis were harassing them. They were beating them up. They were misbehaving with women, misbehaving with our girls. And police was not receptive. And they said there was another office, nobody was reaching there, and somehow I had been more accessible and approachable. So all Indians in distress somehow used to drift to me or come to me, and I, as a matter of this thing, I used to go out of the way to see that, I helped them. And I helped them because I was working in High Commission of India. I was on long-term deputation to Foreign Office, Foreign Ministry for this thing. And I felt, this is an opportunity has come where I could reach out to people. So once it happened, twice it happened, thrice it happened. I said, why is it happening? So some of those students told me that, look, these people are involved in drug and crime. They are not students. They're Pakistanis. And they are so organized that even British police in Sheffield is not able to do anything. So once I reached, that city, incidentally, it was a program organized by members of Indian community, and they had also invited Deputy Chief Constable of that place and some police officers. When I reached the city in the evening after dinner, I gave a list which was given to me by these Indian students that, look, these Pakistanis who are criminals, who are harassing Indian students and particularly girls, and they are here for a long time, and they're building quite a bit of influence. And they're also involved in drug and other things. I said, look, Mr. Deputy Chief Constable, these people threaten your city and your people as well. Don't neglect them simply because they are threatening only Indian students right now. You wouldn't believe, in that night, he said, okay, and I have to leave now. Please excuse me. And he went to. And next day in the morning, he came to see me at hotel. And he said, one of his officers came. And he said that, look, whole night we carried out raids. It is not in media. And 35 or 36 places we carried out raids. Thank you. We knew this thing. But you also helped us. And all these people were Pakistanis. And they were involved in drug trade. And this drug and Islamic propaganda only translates into terrorism. They may not have anything to do with terrorism right now, but they are involved in drug trade and this kind of crime. What I'm trying to say, the best way to move forward from here would be to bolster our criminal justice system. We cannot have our chief justices leading a flamboyant life and enjoying themselves when there are hundreds and thousands of cases pending in our courts. We cannot continue with the existing system. We need to devise a system that total number of cases getting into court is reduced. This is not a charity that we're doing on our people. A country which cannot manage internal conflict effectively is playing with fire as far as its national security is concerned. In this kind of situation, there would be many cases where agents of these foreign subversive forces, this international crime mafia, they may be operating right on the soil of this country. So first you improve your country, build capacity, train other places. If we want to survive as a civilization, we have to contain this criminality. And the best way to contain both China and Pakistan is to set up a top class superior democracy than even, even West and America and Europe, I've been speaking far too in a loud volume. I'm used to speaking on stage and taking classes. I failed to recognize, this is a different medium, and even I speak in a lower volume, it can work. So what I'm trying to say, we have to improve our own criminal justice system. We have to prepare other countries as well. This drug and crime empire has to be shattered. And the day we are able to have a stronger rule of law, a more transparent and functional democracy, let me tell you, there will be changes in China. We do not have to be inimical towards China. We have to guide China same way how Buddhism guided China in 2nd century, 1st century AD. If China is guided, China does well, and it becomes democratic and transparent. India and China, whole of Asia can be a powerful civilization. We have to protect ourselves from the West. We have to tell, well, we have taken your values, many of your strengths. We speak their language. In their language, we are communicating. We have to build a stronger bridge by which even they can benefit and we can be strong. So this is why I feel this is time for Indocracy to come up. We have to devise our own Indocratic model of governance. Not necessarily this, but something which prevents conflict, something which preempts conflict, something which deters conflict, not in India, outside, not necessarily through force, but through collaboration, through formal channels. So that is the long-term way out. And short-term, I would say, we have to create awareness in other countries and ensure that this network is crushed. Second level, we have to ensure that people in Pakistan come up as our partners, because Pakistan was, one of the top 10 countries in terms of HDI when it became independent. Present this thing. Right now, it is at the bottom because of this drug and crime and this syndicate which is ruling Pakistan for its own interests and not in the interest of its own people. So I'm not saying it this for the sake of propaganda. I have a vision that, one day our real original India, right from eastern parts of Asia up to Afghanistan, becomes one. And even if not politically, then culturally. We have to also take care of radicalism. We have to radicalism will not be contained by, counter Hindu nationalism. That is a dangerous way. It is feeding radicalism. We have to tell Devband, we have to tell our Maulanas, we have to tell Maulanas all over the world, you are living in this world. This is not what Holy Prophet taught. He taught to treat other people with respect. Initial Arab traders who came to India, they respected local customs. They respected local tradition. This radicalization of Islam was started in 19th century by colonial powers as a strategic asset against Russia, and it was used against India for a long time. Russia has paid a price, of course, they have suffered. We have to find a solution to all these issues, and that is possible through smart governance strategies, smart leadership-driven initiatives. And I believe that, your Tilotma Foundation, you are also able to float these ideas, and more people reach these ideas and they take some initiative.
Thank you.
Have I answered?
Yeah. In fact, I think there is a need to, further very different kinds of values. Yesterday, as you know, that the Prime Minister and the President, they participated in the Dharma Chakra Day session, and we on our part also organized a live session on this issue where we can spread the message of peace of Lord Buddha. I just want to ask you, we're talking about, the drug money and the illicit funding. It is for this reason that Indian government, as per the explanations provided by the government of India, one of the reasons why the demonetization happened. Do you think these, such a large scale activity like demonetization and other measures that the government of India has taken has in fact helped in controlling this measure? What do you think the government is doing about this sort of illicit drug funding? And I think as we look at, we have been having sessions on different, sort of areas of the world, whether it is Central Asia, whether it is Southeast Asia, everywhere the drug problem, whether if you look at in the Philippines, President Rodrigo Duterte has declared a war against drug. So throughout the world, this is almost like a global problem, this problem against drug. In the United States, they have been fighting against, the Latin American sort of drug cartels, etc. So do you think there can be a need for international cooperation, sort of international organizations like Interpol? Is the Indian government and the Indian police system sort of doing enough on this front?
Well, regarding your demonetization, my knowledge is not very good on this subject. I cannot speak. Maybe what information government had, what prompted them, I would know. And I would not like to share anything which I knew in my professional capacity earlier. But I believe a long-term solution to this problem would be building a stronger strategic capacity, restructuring entire governance system. Because people who are promoting this crime, they are not sometimes ordinary people. They manage to take over institutions because their clout is so strong. I believe that it is this global drug cartel, drug mafia, which is controlling government establishment and entire government establishment in Pakistan. Even military, I would like to believe, rather my analysis says, that they are under control of this drug mafia. This drug mafia is having indirectly subverted political and administrative and police establishment of other large number of other countries. Duterte has launched a thing against this drug crime. Because the whole nature of politics is such that, this money is there. Let me tell you, all insurgencies, even when PLO was at its height of very legitimate political organization, respected, its drug empire was assessed to be at $5 billion at that point of time in 1985. One of the studies had assessed it. As I said, UNODC says that no insurgency is fought without this kind of money. Drug is one money. What has happened? Fake currency, printing of fake notes has also come with that. And this is something very serious, very dangerous. And I feel as long as we have this kind of political, structure where funding is not clear, where family-controlled cartels, group-controlled cartels are dealing in a non-transparent way, this is going to be very difficult. We should not wait for somebody else. look, the kind of security threat we are facing as a state and civilization, this is far more formidable than any other country anywhere in the world. And it is shame and disgraceful when we say we were great. I feel sad that we were great, and from there we are continuing to decline. This was an opportunity which had come to us. And educationists are brilliant. First generation of people who ran government in this country, they were educators. They had no exposure to statecraft. But right now, unfortunately, the structure of bureaucracy is such, the structure of politics is such, it is not throwing up statesmen even now, isn't it? People are having good intent. Good intent is not sufficient. So, to answer your question, we have to have a far stronger criminal justice system. It's impossible, to arrest people, put them through trial, and finish this problem. This is virtually impossible. You cannot work on one front because they are so powerful. They can derail everything. They can control sections of media. As I said, I was mentioning that, our enemies are not necessarily on borders. They can control sections of media. They can manipulate public opinion against you. They can clandestinely kill you. They can control sections of police establishment. That is newer threat to national security. And they can destroy officers who are, very patriotic and nationalist, and those who are very energetic. They can target. That is the clout they're having. So you have to have a wholesale, I would say rather, a wholehearted restructuring of institutions. You have to bring in transparency, and transparency is not going to be possible if your political parties remain family-controlled syndicates. Large amount of this drug and crime money, dirty money, which is called, my friends who are specializing in this area, they have told me that this has been transferred, channeled into legitimate corporate and industry also. But these people who are investing in this, they continue to run parallel government. They continue to influence things. So this is a very dangerous kind of situation, I would say, and we are extremely vulnerable. This is not going to be possible by one front thing and by typical some kind of reform. And the answer is also not what Duterte is doing in Philippines. That is again dangerous, and it's impossible, because that is going to have a fallout. That will cripple a country like this. Because same Duterte who's launched an offensive on drug money, what is he doing? He is accused of bartering interest of Philippines to China. So what I'm trying to say, that democracy in India is not an outcome of our association with the British. It is there in our blood. Raja Bharat's story, Mahabharata has shown in a very superficial manner. I had privileged, to read some of the scriptures. I come from a family of Brahmins who our knowledge is passed through, words. I never took it seriously when I was told, but a lot of things, our structure, I was told. Now, after reading Cambridge history, I'm realizing that, yes, this is correct. Cambridge history says that castes, etc., are artificial creations. We did have republics for a long time, and the process of consultation was there. So a good system with checks and balances, we have to research, we have to come out, and it is not sufficient that politicians alone take initiative. We have to start a much bigger awareness. All India's stakeholders, they have to come together. Look, for some time we can survive. We are playing with fire if we do not revamp our institutions. So there will be multi-pronged strategy.
Thank you so much. I think we have sort of a question. I will check the questions on Facebook. We have one more question on Facebook. This is again by Shudipta Saha. She says that Galwan River is flowing in a very dangerous way on the Chinese sides. It's a news release that Chinese camp on this area are flooded and they are moving now. But we are not aware of the real scenario. But if it's true, what will be our strategy for protecting our areas if floods happen on our side? Is it possible that the problem will get resolved during the cold when snowfall started? What are the possibilities?
Look, I do not speak. I avoid speaking on tactical matters. Even in media, you would have noticed that I say we should better leave it to our troops. They are on the ground. They know it better. And the generals who are there, I have done a course in National Defense College also, and I am not in touch with my friends, but I'm sure that some of my friends would also be in that area. They are top-class professionals. So as far as Galwan River is concerned and these tactical battlefield or frontline strategies are concerned, I refrain from commenting on these because there are better experts. My whole thing is a broader format of national security with an element of geopolitics and elements of governance. What I've been maintaining last 1.5 months back also, I said, look, this is not going to be easy unless and until there is multi-pronged pressure on the Chinese. And another thing I would tell, that soldiers in China are not very well paid and they're not very motivated people. China has been having a lot of internal conflicts. This GDP, GNP is brilliant, but there is this kind of oligarchy in China. A small number of course, there is prosperity. There is, I would say, middle class is also, their numbers have increased, but it has not been that the soldiers, they are very high on their morale. You would have noticed that these Chinese soldiers, when they were killed, Chinese government refused to acknowledge them. There is resentment in China. So it's not that that entirely things are to our disadvantage. To this extent, I can say, and I'm not saying it as part of cyber or propaganda. I'm saying it realistically, having visited China, having seen China also. So Galwan River, let us leave it to them. But as I've been mentioning, Chinese have a tendency, because, one more thing Siddhartha has not asked me, as I said, China had a culture of building walls. And what does it show? What is your psyche? You are a defensive country. And when you're a defensive country, these are defensive countries, inward-looking countries. These are countries which become more violent, more cruel, despite being defensive, and not now, from the era of, Qin Empire, the original Qin, this thing. The secrecy in court has been a part of their culture. Exact culture has continued up to Mao. He killed nearly 40 million of Chinese population he wiped out. 4 million or 40 million, I'm not sure, but certainly I suppose 4 million, not 40 million would be too much. So this kind of culture, there is resentment building within China. I don't know to what extent it has reached. People are trained to be pacifists. They will not be in a position to revolt unless and until there is a bigger flashpoint or something like this. So let us not worry too much about Galwan. Let us trust our troops and let us recognize that Chinese are not as cohesive and as strong as they may appear on paper, because they have been blocking every information. We have seen what is happening in Hong Kong. There are hundreds of protests in China every day, and their energies are getting converted into that. Of course, they have created massive infrastructure. Their strength we should admire, but we should not worry at this moment beyond a certain point. Let Galwan be handled by our troops on the border.
Thank you. At this point, I would like to shift to more internal issues, and Sudipta has also.
How long my throat is not supporting me? 1.5 hours we have spoken.
Okay, sure. Okay,
next 5 minutes, let us conclude.
Yeah, sure. Then we just conclude on one issue, which one of questions has also come. I will just rephrase it. So if you could comment a bit on, so do you think that the Maoist or the Naxalite violence issue what is the relevance of that threat today? And also the law and order and the security situation in Northeast. If you could comment on both of these issues.
I understand law and order and security situation in Northeast has improved. This is what my understanding is, and not now. Last many years, decades rather, I have been of the view that this governance structure is not capable of optimally handling internal security. We need serious reforms, and I think there is no serious alienation of people, either in Northeast or even in Chhattisgarh and this so-called Naxal-infested area. These are governance failures, where some cartels in these areas, they have criminalized cartels who are masquerading as Naxalites or this thing. Some of them may be motivated. I believe with a better governance, it is possible in the next 5 to 15 years to eliminate this thing. But if we expect, this kind of governance model to bail us out or extricate us from this situation, this is not going to do it. I hope that our Prime Minister, who has massive mandate, takes a bold and courageous move. He is one person. History is not. suppose we lost connection. What I'm saying that history is not going to give us this opportunity on too many occasions to bring about serious governance reforms. So once you're able to bring about governance reforms, which we are speaking, a more responsive and leadership-driven, a more skilled kind of security setup, more skilled and more competent criminal justice system, more efficient civil administration, and more responsive political parties, this will be an entirely different discussion. I'm sure we can eliminate these two problems, but I'm of the view that these two problems are not very serious at this moment, both Northeast and as well as Chhattisgarh area.
Thank you so much for your very insightful answer and for joining us today for this session. We are having some connectivity issues, that is why the video got disconnected. Thank you so much. We will not detain you longer. Thanks a lot. And
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thanks to all the viewers who are watching. Thank you.